Welcome to another episode of Murder Mystery. Today, we delve into a tragic and deeply unsettling story that raises profound questions about alternative medicine, trust, and responsibility. This is the story of a 71-year-old woman who placed her faith in an unorthodox healing method, only to lose her life in a way no one could have predicted. In October 2016, Danielle Carr-Gomm, a 71-year-old diabetic woman, traveled to Cleve House in Seand, Wiltshire, seeking relief and healing through a method called pitologene therapy. This alternative healing practice, rooted in traditional Chinese medicine, promised to cleanse the body and spirit through a combination of slapping and stretching techniques. For Danielle, who had been managing her diabetes with insulin, the retreat offered hope, a chance to restore balance and well-being to her life. But instead of healing, this retreat would lead to her untimely death. Pitologene therapy is a controversial practice. It involves participants being slapped or slapping themselves in order to stimulate the body's meridians and expel toxins. Proponents claim that this harsh physical treatment can cure a wide range of ailments, from chronic pain to serious illnesses. However, it's a method that has drawn skepticism and concern from the medical community, particularly when patients are encouraged to abandon conventional medical treatments. Danielle Carr-Gomm, like many others, was drawn to this retreat in search of an alternative solution. But under the guidance of an alternative healer leading the retreat, she made a fateful decision. She stopped taking her insulin. Over the course of the retreat, Danielle's health began to deteriorate rapidly. The slapping therapy that was supposed to restore her body instead took a deadly toll. By the time the seriousness of her condition was recognized, it was too late. Danielle Carr-Gomm died during the retreat, her body overwhelmed by the complications of untreated diabetes. Her death was a shock to her family and friends, who had trusted that she was in safe hands. But as the details emerged, the focus quickly turned to the alternative healer who had been in charge of the retreat. Why had Danielle been encouraged to stop her life-saving medication? Why hadn't medical help been sought sooner? These questions would soon be answered in a courtroom. The healer, who claimed to be offering a path to wellness, was charged with manslaughter. The court heard how Danielle had been persuaded to forego her insulin and trust entirely in the pitologene therapy. The prosecution argued that this gross negligence had directly led to her death, and after a thorough investigation, the healer was found guilty. The case sent shockwaves through the world of alternative medicine, shining a harsh light on the dangers of unregulated treatments and the blind trust some patients place in practitioners. It also served as a tragic reminder of the importance of evidence-based medical care, especially for those with serious health conditions. Danielle Carr-Gomm's death was a preventable tragedy. It raises critical questions about the limits of alternative medicine and the responsibility of those who promote such practices. In a world where people are often desperate for cures and relief, the lines between hope and harm can become dangerously blurred. The story of Danielle Carr-Gomm took an even darker turn as the trial of Hongqi Xiao unfolded at Winchester Crown Court. Xiao, a 61-year-old alternative healer from Cloudbreak, California, stood accused of manslaughter by gross negligence, a charge that would bring to light not just the circumstances of Danielle's death, but a pattern of dangerous practices that had already claimed another life on the other side of the world. Hongqi Xiao was no stranger to controversy. Before Danielle's tragic end, Xiao had been prosecuted in Australia over the death of a 6-year-old boy. The boy's parents, desperate for a cure, had withdrawn his insulin medication after attending one of Xiao's workshops in Sydney. Just like Danielle, the child's health rapidly declined, and he died as a result of untreated diabetes. Despite this, Xiao continued to promote his methods, traveling across the globe to spread the dangerous doctrine of pitologene therapy. Xiao was extradited from Australia to face justice for Danielle's death in the UK. The court heard harrowing testimonies of how the elderly woman, who had been managing her type 1 diabetes since 1999, was left in excruciating pain as her condition deteriorated over the course of the retreat. Witnesses described her howling in pain as the effects of untreated diabetes ravaged her body. Yet, no medical intervention was sought. On the fourth day of the workshop, Danielle Carr-Gomm succumbed to the consequences of the negligence she suffered under Zhao's care. The jury at Winchester Crown Court found Hongqi Xiao guilty of manslaughter by gross negligence. The verdict was a stark reminder of the deadly consequences that can result when unproven and unregulated medical practices are placed above evidence-based care. Hongqi Xiao's conviction sent shockwaves through the alternative medicine community and beyond. It underscored the dangers of placing faith in healers who claim miraculous cures without the backing of science or medical expertise. It also highlighted the vulnerability of individuals searching for hope in the face of chronic illness. Individuals like Danielle Carr-Gomm, whose trust was betrayed in the most tragic way possible. As we reflect on the outcomes of this case, it's crucial to remember that the pursuit of health should never come at the cost of our safety. The legacy of Danielle Carr-Gomm and others like her serves as a powerful reminder to always approach alternative therapies with a critical eye, to seek out reliable medical advice, and to protect ourselves from those who would exploit our hopes and fears for their own gain. As the trial of Hongqi Xiao progressed, more details of Danielle Carr-Gomm's tragic journey emerged, painting a picture of a woman caught between her fears and her hope for a better way to manage her illness. Duncan Atkinson KC, prosecuting, laid out the circumstances that led Danielle to place her trust in an unorthodox and ultimately deadly alternative therapy. Danielle Carr-Gomm had struggled with her diabetes for years. Diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1999, she faced the daily challenge of managing her condition with insulin injections, a necessity that conflicted with her personal beliefs and lifestyle. A committed vegetarian, Danielle also harbored a deep-seated fear of needles. These factors drove her to seek out alternatives to the conventional treatment that kept her alive. It was this search for an alternative that first led her to Hongqi Xiao. In July 2016, Danielle attended a pidolagine workshop in Bulgaria, hoping that the unconventional therapy might offer her a way to control her diabetes without the need for insulin. The workshop, led by Xiao, encouraged participants to stop taking their prescribed medications and instead rely on the supposed healing power of slapping therapy. But Danielle's first experience with pidolagine nearly ended in disaster. After she stopped taking her insulin, her health rapidly declined, and she became seriously ill. Realizing the gravity of her condition, Danielle resumed her insulin regimen and fortunately recovered. Despite this frightening episode, Danielle was still drawn to the promises of pidolagine. Perhaps she hoped that her initial experience had been a fluke, or that she had simply not followed the method correctly. Whatever the reason, she made the fateful decision to attend another of Zhao's workshops, this time in Wiltshire, England, in October 2016. Duncan Atkinson KC described to the jury how Danielle once again stopped taking her insulin under Zhao's guidance. But unlike the previous occasion, this time, she would not recover. Danielle's decision to trust in pidolagine therapy for a second time ultimately cost her life. Despite the clear warning signs from her earlier experience, she was persuaded to abandon the medication that kept her diabetes in check, leading to the rapid and painful deterioration of her health. The tragic story of Danielle Carr-Gomm is a stark reminder of the dangers that can arise when vulnerable individuals are swayed by unproven and potentially dangerous alternative therapies. It also highlights the critical importance of adhering to evidence-based medical treatments, particularly for chronic conditions like diabetes, where the consequences of abandoning prescribed care can be fatal. As Danielle Carr-Gomm's condition worsened at the Cleve House retreat, the court heard chilling details of how Hongqi Xiao responded to her decision to stop taking insulin. When Danielle announced to the group that she had ceased her medication, Xiao's reaction was not one of concern, but rather one of encouragement. "Well done," he said, reinforcing her dangerous choice. By the third day of the retreat, Danielle was gravely ill. The prosecutor, Duncan Atkinson KC, detailed how her condition deteriorated rapidly. She was vomiting, weak, and by evening, she was in unbearable pain. Her suffering was so severe that she was howling, unable to respond coherently to questions. Despite these alarming symptoms, Xiao and those around him failed to act. A chef at the workshop, Teresa Hayes, provided a harrowing account of Danielle's final hours. She described how Danielle became delirious and was frothing at the mouth before she died. Hayes admitted to jurors that she had wanted to call an ambulance, but ultimately deferred to those with more experience in the holistic healing method, believing they knew better. But the trust placed in Xiao and his method would prove fatal. Instead of seeking medical help, Xiao and his followers misinterpreted Danielle's condition as a healing crisis, a term often used in alternative medicine circles to describe a temporary worsening of symptoms that is mistakenly believed to be part of the recovery process. In reality, Danielle was in the throes of a life-threatening diabetic crisis. Mr. Atkinson told the jury that Xiao had been promoting pidolagine for a decade, presenting himself as an expert in this unconventional practice. Despite lacking any medical qualifications or training, Xiao had authored a book on the therapy, making bold and dangerously misleading claims. He asserted that insulin use led to liver and eye problems, and that pidolagine was safer and more reliable than conventional treatments. Xiao even went so far as to claim that his method could bring significant improvement or full recovery in 90% of cases, including those involving diabetes. These assertions were not only unfounded but deadly. The court was left to grapple with the devastating consequences of Xiao's unproven and unregulated practices, as Danielle Carr-Gomm's life was cut short by the very treatment she believed might save her. As the trial of Hongqi Xiao continued, the court delved deeper into the dangerous beliefs he propagated. Xiao's book, which had misled so many, contained claims that were not just misguided but outright dangerous. He wrote that doctors are brainwashed by drug producers to act as salespersons for their drugs, fueling distrust in conventional medicine. This was the mindset that Danielle Carr-Gomm had been drawn into, a mindset that ultimately led to her tragic death. Danielle herself had become an ardent believer in Xiao's teachings. In a testimonial she provided for him, she described Xiao as a messenger sent by God, praising him for starting a revolution to put the power back in the hands of the people to cure themselves and to change the whole system of healthcare. Her words, reflecting her deep trust in Xiao's methods, now stand as a haunting reminder of how that trust was betrayed. Danielle Carr-Gomm's journey began in France, where she was born, before moving to the UK at the age of 21. Her son, Matthew Carr-Gomm, who resides in New Zealand, spoke after her death about her lifelong interest in alternative medicine. She was always keen to try and find alternative methods of treating and dealing with her diabetes, and was very interested in alternative and holistic medicine and therapies, he said. Matthew described his mother as someone who maintained a healthy lifestyle and was determined to live life to the fullest, despite her diagnosis. In recent years, Mum was in a great place, with a partner, a lovely home, and was traveling the world. She had a lot of life left in her. The sudden loss of his mother had been a huge shock to the family. During the trial, Xiao attempted to defend his actions, insisting that he would never persuade someone who needed insulin not to take it. He acknowledged that insulin was useful and claimed that his concern lay with the side effects of medication rather than the medication itself. First of all, I said I'm not a medical doctor, so everyone is responsible for their own medication. Secondly, I'm not fully against medicine. What I'm concerned about is the side effects of the medicine, Xiao stated. However, these statements did little to mitigate the severity of his actions. The prosecution argued that Xiao knew full well the potentially fatal consequences of Danielle's decision to stop taking insulin. He had witnessed a similar tragedy before in Australia. Despite this, Xiao failed to act as Danielle's condition deteriorated, ultimately leading to her death. Following the verdict, Rosemary Ainsley, head of the Crown Prosecution Service, emphasized the gravity of Zhao's negligence. Hongqi Xiao knew the consequences of Danielle Carr-Gomm's decision to stop taking insulin could be fatal. He had seen it before. Hongqi Xiao was the man in charge, yet he failed to respond to Mrs. Carr-Gomm's worsening condition with tragic consequences. His failure to take reasonable steps to help Mrs. Carr-Gomm substantially contributed to her death and amounted to gross negligence. Zhao's conviction serves as a stark reminder of the dangers inherent in placing trust in unregulated and unproven alternative therapies. The consequences, as Danielle Carr-Gomm's case shows, can be devastating. Hongqi Xiao is scheduled to be sentenced on October 1st, bringing some closure to a case that has left many questioning the boundaries between alternative healing and responsible medical care. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Murder Mystery, Twists of Fate. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your support helps us continue to tell these important stories, where the search for healing can sometimes lead to tragic outcomes. Stay informed, stay critical, and remember to prioritize your health with evidence-based care. Until next time.